Hey everybody, welcome back to the Level Loop podcast, the Temple of Geek video games podcast. This is officially episode 2. We're going to be catching up with a bunch of games from the last month, from February to March, including Avowed, Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, Split Fiction, and more. We're going to talk about some news, some more fun stuff. As always, my name is Myles. I'm your host. I am once again joined by Kurosh.
Hi, everyone.
And Danreb.
Yo, yo, yo.
Hello. Okay, let's just jump right into it. We have a lot of show to talk about. First off, at the very top, I just want to mention I am playing Assassin's Creed Shadows for review. I'm allowed to talk about that I'm playing it. That's it. My review will be published March 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific, which is when the embargo is up. That'll just be a written article, so please look forward to that.
Need the exact date and time, though.
I'm trying to be official, you know? Next item of housekeeping, real quick. WonderCon 2025 is happening at the end of March. Kurosh, you have something to say about this. Please take it away.
Yeah, if you have been loving the three of us to your heart's content, which I'm sure many of you have, you can actually find us at the convention as part of the convention. I'm hosting a panel with Danreb and Myles on the panel as panelists. And the panel is called Critic, Creator, The Craft of Video Game Reviews. It'll be on Saturday of the WonderCon convention in Anaheim Convention Center at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. in room 300E. And alongside Myles and Danreb will be Lisa Whalen, stand-up comedian, streamer, 8-Bit Closed Fist, big creator in the video game space, and Madrea Star, who's a big streamer and involved in video games as well, and just loving and being a content creator. And so the panel is just kind of like a conversation from both traditional and content creator sides of like how video game reviews are handled from all different sides and how it's been done. So we'll go into the depths of it there. Be sure if you're there, check us out. Come say hi, see us. It's going to be a good time. We're going to have a good time, and looking forward to seeing everyone there.
I'm excited. Yeah, and we will also just be there like most of the weekend too, just walking around, hanging out. So say hi.
Yeah, I've never been to WonderCon, so I'm really excited.
Oh, right on. Yeah, this will be like my 5th.
Nice.
Okay, so let's just get right into the meat of this. Let's start off with some news. The Pokemon Day was February, I believe, 27th, just over a week ago. We had the Pokemon Presents, kind of talked about what's coming up in the world of Pokemon. With the Switch 2 looming, they kind of didn't really specify a lot of like dates and platforms, but a lot of this stuff is safe to assume. I'm just going to do a quick rapid fire, just all of what was talked about real quick. Thank you, Polygon, for the list. So they had announced Pokemon Champions, which is like, I believe it was leaked as well a few months ago. It's like a battle-focused game. It's going to be on Switch and mobile, likely on Switch 2 as well. And then new set for Pokemon TCG Pocket. New Pokemon coming to Pokemon Unite, which is the MOBA. New content for Pokemon Masters EX, new content for Pokemon Sleep, new content for Pokemon Cafe Remix, which apparently is really good. I haven't played it. A new trailer for Season 2, I believe, of Pokemon Concierge. And then the big one, gameplay for Pokemon Legends ZA. And we don't need to cover all of this. Let's kind of start from the bottom up. Pokemon Champions. So this kind of gives me like Pokemon Battle Revolution vibes from the Wii. Danreb, you seem to be hyped about this. What do you think about Pokemon Champions?
I don't know about hyped, but this is definitely something that like me as a lifelong Pokemon fan from the very beginning is looking forward to. Like they were showing a lot of connectivity things like going back to yonder years, and the cool thing that I saw was they have connectivity with Pokemon Go, and that's a great way to get a bunch of casual Pokemon fans into it. And the big thing here is that it's going to be on both mobile and the Nintendo Switch family of systems. So that's how we get the Switch 2 involved. But yeah, taking this mobile is huge because there is no easy way to manage your entire library of Pokemon, and that's one big way to do it. And you were talking about your Pokemon battle routes. I've never even played that game. The last time I played a Pokemon battler was Pokemon Stadium 2, and that was way back when. So I'm looking forward to jumping back in whenever that may be.
Kurosh, what are your thoughts here? Pokemon Champions.
I think the biggest thing that interested me about this was Game Freak's involvement.
Yeah.
Seeing that they were part of it in some fashion, alongside with what Danreb was talking about of its connectivity across the mobile. I think they tested the waters with that with Pokemon Unite being both on mobile and on the Switch platform was a good move, and I think they're following suit here. Just again, seeing like combat for Pokemon has been so familiar in the tried and true main games, to see them expand, and they've done Pokken, they've done Unite, they've done a different types of PvP or combat in different forms. I think this being kind of akin to a Coliseum, a stadium type thing, I'm curious what they're going to do that makes it stand out and be a little bit different as they explore the many different ways in which we enjoy Pokemon.
I'm wondering if it's going to be in the same vein as like a Pokemon Stadium, where it's going to have like the battle like main kind of like style, and then like mini games and stuff like that. I'm leaning towards no. The fact that this is also coming to mobile also leads me to believe it's going to be free to play with some sort of like updates and like live service ish mechanics. I'll still play it. It's
I'll give it a
Pokemon. I'm a
shot.
Pokemon sicko. Yeah, I'm still gonna play it. Okay. Pokemon TCG Pocket, new set Triumphant Light came out the next day. It was like one of those smaller sets. It's still kind of focused on Generation 4, with Arceus being like the main legendary on the packs. That's fine. I think the biggest update for this that they announced was that ranked play came out this same day. Um, for me, as a big TCG fan, I love this game. I love Magic. Um, yeah, I'm really excited to see how ranked works. If it's like Magic Arena or anything where you win X amount of games and you rank up, and then if you lose more, then you rank back down. I feel like Pokemon's never really been that hardcore. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. Yeah, but it looks interesting. Kurosh, I think you raised a hand.
Yeah, so the ranked side of it, I need to correct something there. It is not yet out.
Oh,
Um, they do have a new ribbon of combat, but the ranked mode is. I've been looking because I've been eagerly waiting for it to launch. It is looming in the near future. I think it's sometime late March. It's going to be
okay.
launching, and the ELO like ranking kind of system is going to be interesting. The more they do, I dabbled with the initial launch of it with the PvP matchups, and I think since then I've like revisited now with this new pack launch, and I'm 3 cards away from completing the Pokedex for this set. So if anyone has a Heatran or Raichu or Magnezone, like talk to me please. But they have expanded a little bit more. It's very Pokemon Snap, or not Pokemon Snap, Marvel Snappy, where it's like very short, like little bite-sized kind of moments of combat, but they're doing a little bit more in interesting ways with the combat that I think lends itself to having a rank system of like hopefully having a varied meta. I hope, rather than hey, here's one type of deck. If you don't have it, you're done. So I'm
Yeah.
curious how that's going to play out.
That's kind of the like the natural progression of TCGs like this, where there's a meta that's good, and then cards come out like nonstop, and it's always changing. And there is a pretty like hardcore competitive scene with Pocket. If you go on like YouTube or Twitch, it's all over the place. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how ranked shakes out, and then how the meta continues to evolve, pun intended. Anyone? This do I don't think really any of us have big interest in Pokemon Unite. I played it at launch for like 2 hours. It was cool. I'm happy to just gloss over this. Danrib, I'm sorry, you had something to say about Pocket?
Yeah, just real quick about Pocket. I mean, like, I don't really play it anymore. Not that I'm not interested. I just haven't had the time. Have you guys been like so into it that you guys jumped into the McDonald's stuff? Or
I got 1 card, and every time they do the McDonald's thing, especially with Pokemon, it gets so fanatic and like crazed that McDonald's will like limit purchases and do all this stuff. I don't have the energy anymore to do
Yeah,
that. So I went and got 1 pack one night. I was like, that was fun. I'm gonna sit this out.
I purposely don't play the paper game because I used to play Magic competitively, and it's just a very expensive hobby. So as much as I want to crack
the
Pokemon
reason why
packs.
I bring this up is because if you bought a Happy Meal through the app, they give you a code to redeem on Pocket.
Oh, didn't know
So
that.
yeah, I still have mine. I haven't used it. I want to use it. I just don't know how it ended up for people. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That's cool. I didn't know that. Okay. Let's get to the big one. Pokemon Legends ZA. So they showed off gameplay. I'm gonna push play on this with the stuff muted just so I can look. So yeah, it takes place in Lumios, which is Gen 5 Kalos region. It's a lot more modern day than what Legends Arceus was, but it still has that kind of open world vibe. The big change here is combat, where traditionally Pokemon games have always been just like regular turn-based RPGs. This has real-time elements, kind of like a Xenoblade Chronicles. So it's going to add a lot more like challenge. I guess these games haven't ever really been hard. Kurosh, what do you think of the combat here? Do you have any thoughts overall about the trailer?
Yeah, I thought they did Cynical dirty. The Chikorita and Totodile there, and I'm very curious if there's a story reason why Tepig was swapped with Cynical, given that they're typically from the swap. I mean, Tepig's cool, but I mean, like, it was just interesting seeing that kind of shift. But the combat is probably like I was saying with Champions. I'm very curious how this new combat mechanic's going to work because it makes it feel more real time, and it's something I'm noticing more and more in JRPGs. There's and even just general RPGs, but JRPGs typically lean towards a lot of turn-based mechanics, and for them to also have their kind of response or reaction to how do we keep up with like the modern day attention span, and like how is turn-based feel relevant, or how do we evolve from it. I want to see what that looks like, and I also am very curious how it's going to look like with the competitive scene. I wonder if that is going to be what, because champions not champions the championships this year is going to be in Anaheim in
Oh,
August. So I maybe we'll see up close and personal what that competitive scene looks like. But yeah, I'm curious. I like when they try new stuff.
yeah. So with Cyndaquil, he was a starter in Legends Arceus, so I think that's why he's not in this.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Didn't
yeah.
know that.
Okay.
Uh, Danreb, thoughts on this gameplay reveal for Pokemon Legends ZA?
Yeah, I love Pokemon Legends Arceus. I actually liked it a whole lot better than Scarlet and Violet, primarily because it performed a little better. Um, but yeah, like as far as the battle changes go, I feel like it doesn't do enough. My one complaint with Pokemon Legends Arceus was it was pretty much the same thing, except you can move your trainer around. Now you can move your trainer around and get hurt, and you can also use attacks at specific points. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's still turn based. The funny thing is, like the closest thing that I can compare it to is Legend of Heroes Trails to Daybreak, and I'm like, oh, cool, they're totally being inspired by Trails, and I absolutely love it. But like where I like, especially since it's a side series, where I really want to see Pokemon go is kind of like do what they do with Tales Symphonia, or I don't know if you guys played
Mm.
Nino Kuni.
Yeah.
Nino Kuni, like they throw the monster out, and all of a sudden like it's full on action based. It's the same thing as Pokemon. That's really I want to see where I want to see it go, because Pokemon Legends doesn't really belong in the competitive scene, if you ask me. That being said, I am interested in seeing somewhat more of a limited open world. The weird thing I saw was the dudes just jumping over houses, and I'm like, that's very Assassin's Creed. That's really interesting.
Yeah, like what's the point?
And like my other issue with the Legends Arceus was, it was supposed to be one of the first Pokemon open world games, right? But it felt open world like Monster Hunter open world. Like they were zones. They weren't really like completely streamlined areas. Other than that, though, I'm really excited. I love the whole like futuristic kind of vibe through it, and I really want to see what it's about.
uh, Kurosh, you raised a hand there. What's up?
Yeah, I agree with all your points, Danreb, about the RCS over Scarlet and Violet. The thing that I did really enjoy about Scarlet and Violet, and I hope that they take into consideration here, is that was probably the closest we got to a feeling of cooperative play through the story. It was kind of like tested out with that one in Scarlet and Violet, where you could join someone else's world and just go and catch your own Pokemon together or separately. And do go through. I had two friends come over, and the three of us were playing, and we were like, "Hey, let's just get into everyone's world and do our own thing." We were all at different story points, and I liked that a lot. I think we've asked for a lot of an MMO in a lot of ways, and that was probably the closest little inkling to that. So, if elements of that could be blended in here, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And like again, like the main reason why I liked Arceus better was because it performed a little better.
Yeah.
If Pokemon Scarlet and Violet didn't have like their windmills moving in stopgap motion, I would have said that this is probably the best Pokemon game that exists. Also,
Yep.
to me, it was hard. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
No,
Scarlet
it
Violet
was.
is really good. It has a lot of good things going. It just ran like complete ass. A couple more small details with Legends here. Mega Evolution is back, and there's going to be a couple of new megas, I believe. Uh, they showed off a new one in the trailer. I think it was Milotic or something. But it's back, so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that works. I believe everything like the moves and everything are going to be on a cooldown system, so
Mm.
maybe Mega Evolution will be like that as well. So. Okay, final thoughts on Pokemon Legends ZA or the Pokemon Presents as a whole. Oh, you know what, Danreb, actually, you wanted to talk about Pokemon Concierge. Tell me
yeah.
about it.
I mean, like for the whole thing as a whole, I mean, I know a lot of people thought it was boring, but the main thing about Pokemon is that it transcends gamers now. You know,
Yeah.
it's not just about the games. You know, we're talking about the cards, we're talking about the TV shows, we're talking about merchandise. It's a whole thing. It's such a big thing that it's not even really Nintendo anymore. You got to keep that in mind. But yeah, Pokemon Concierge, I am extremely excited for. When that came out, like what last Christmas, I really
Yes.
enjoyed it. It was so good. I watched it 3 times. I watched it by myself, I watched it with my family, and I watched it with my girlfriend. And like the reason why it was so easy to watch was because it was so wholesome. It's also really short. And that being said, you can watch the first 4 episodes on their YouTube page. So definitely check it out. They recently signed a deal with the guys behind Wallace and Gromit. I forgot what the studio is called, but I don't know if they're helping out with Pokemon Concierge, but I'm excited for that project too.
Awesome. Yeah, so for those who don't know, Pokemon Concierge is like a stop motion animated show set in the world of Pokemon. There was another show like featuring Dragon. I forget what it's called. It's separate from this. That
Yes,
also looks cool. I don't. It wasn't mentioned here, but that also looks cool.
I haven't seen that yet, but I do want to hop onto that.
Dragonite and the Postman is an
That's the one.
anime. It premiered on YouTube like the day of the Pokemon Day.
Nice. Dragonite is my favorite Pokemon, so we'll definitely check that out once I get time, which will be never. Okay, Pokemon Presents in the past. That's great. It was yeah. We have a lot to look forward to there with the Switch 2 coming. I'm sure they're going to be talking about a lot more stuff. So we're going to move on to our reviews and impressions and demo hands-on section. So we got a lot to cover here. I'll start. We're a few weeks late, but I've been playing Avowed. This is the new first-person open-world fantasy RPG developed by Obsidian Entertainment of Fallout New Vegas fame, and it's really good. I'm enjoying it. Something a lot of people have been doing that I've seen online is comparing it to games like Skyrim or Fallout 4. I don't really think that's a fair comparison. Avowed has similar systems, but it's a linear experience kind of masked by like open zones to let people think it's really open world. I really honestly wouldn't say it's open world, more open zone. But the first person combat is very similar to what you'd get in Skyrim or Fallout or even their other IP, Outer Worlds. It's fun. The story, so it takes place in the world of Pillars of Eternity, which I have never played, so I'm not really too familiar with any of the lore here. But I like the characters, I like the writing, the voice acting is amazing. You get companions in the game. One of them, Kai, is the same voice actor as one of the companions from Mass Effect. I think his name is Grius or
Garrus?
Garrus. That's the one. Thank you. So a lot of people love Kai already. Yeah, he's great. He's hilarious. There's like weirdly a lot of comedy in the game, which kind of I think brings it all together. One thing I was expecting personally was like a deeper sort of like character build and creation system, and like that's present, but it's not really in depth. You don't really craft your own gear. You don't really like forge or like create your own weapons with their own like effects or anything. You can get like common stuff, like a sword or a shield or like gloves or whatever, and you can upgrade them. But what you want to do, which is where the game really rewards exploration, is look for unique items. So these are like, you know, cooler looking stuff that have like unique effects and enchantments. For example, my build right now, I'm using like frost magic, and so I have a wand that my power attacks build frost accumulation. Once that's filled, then the enemy is frozen solid, and then I can like swap to like a hammer or something and like smash them to pieces. It's great. The combats, I would say the best part of the game. Um, and so I'm also playing it on Xbox Series S, and it runs beautifully and it's gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful games that I've ever seen in my life. I could ramble about it. So I would say so far it's my game of the year. Granted, I've only played like 4 games so far, so it's like a medium height bar. Um, Kurosh, do you have any thoughts on this? Are you interested in Avowed? Do you have any questions for me about my experience, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been curious about it for a while, and I've been waiting to hear your opinion on this in a big way. So, as someone like yourself who also hasn't really explored the Pillars of Eternity world, how abrasive was that? Was it pretty easy to jump into? Were you okay? Or did you feel like you were missing anything? Like, could you describe any of that for me?
That's a great question. So Avowed takes place on a different continent from the first 2 games. So it's set in the Living Lands, which is like across like their ocean.
Okay.
I do know it takes place like 3 to 5 years after Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, because that again I don't really know what happened there, but it was like a huge event that like affected the entire world and like all the gods and stuff. People in Avowed still constantly refer to the events of Deadfire. So, um, but it's not like the main focus of Avowed's story. You can play it, and it's definitely self-contained. But
Okay.
if you want like the smaller world building stuff, I would go back and play Pillars of Eternity. But I'm not gonna do that. But it's fun.
Okay. I had another question, and
Please.
that's in I know Obsidian, their last like big one that I recall was The Outer Worlds.
Yes.
And I know that the next one's coming out later this year. How familiar or different does this feel from what Outer Worlds did? Did you see a lot of the similar DNA, or do you feel like it's doing something different?
The DNA is definitely there. I don't want to
Yeah.
keep making the Fallout to Elder Scrolls comparison, but like this is their version of that, where Avowed is this fantasy world. So the combat and like spells and stuff like that is gonna feel much different to the Outer Worlds, which is sci-fi. So
Mhm.
guns and lasers and ships and stuff like that. So the same DNA in the sense that it's a first-person open world, make your own character with stats, which is different, vibes, I guess. Real quick, now that we're talking about it, I'm very curious to see what Obsidian is able to do with a fantasy game of their own IP, as opposed to being licensed out to make this. So I think, yeah, they definitely have something special here.
I have one more question, if that's
Please.
okay, Danreb, before you jump in. So it being Avowed doing its own thing, with Obsidian, the Outer Worlds. How much? And this is me just not knowing going into this, and I don't think it was really too advertised, or maybe I missed it. Is there a lot of player agency? Like, do you affect the world? Do you have choices, or is it like you were describing a little bit earlier? There was a lot of linearity. Is that more so? Is like the path it's taking on, and then you can navigate? Is your game going to be different than my game?
Um, Linear in the sense that you just kind of go forward with the story, but
Okay.
that doesn't really make sense unless you play it. But to answer your question, absolutely yes, it's insane. So I'll try to avoid spoilers, but something that's definitely worth mentioning is in one of the 4 like main explorable zones, you can find a cave, and in that cave is the like main bad guy like group. Okay, you can kill them or leave.
Okay.
Um, Depending on what you do after certain main quest stuff, the city there that you go to do side quests, bounties, talk to NPCs, and explore, depending on what you do in that cave, that city will be completely burnt to the ground, and you cannot ever go back to it unless you do another playthrough. And so
Okay.
it's insane. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I love player agency.
yeah,
That sounds exciting.
yes. So there's that on like that large scale, but of course it's throughout the whole game on like a smaller scale too. Like you can choose to like, okay, I'm gonna kill this troll who's he's a troll. He's an enemy of like the people or whatever. Or I can help him because he's sick and he just wants to live. So there's actually a lot of that stuff in the game.
Okay.
It's really cool. Danreb, thoughts on Avowed? Any questions?
Not really. I am not much of a Western RPG guy. My main thing with with Avowed though was, as you guys mentioned, it's from the Pillars of Eternity world. I learned that today. I had absolutely no idea. Um, my main interest comes from the fact that it kind of takes more of an isolated, central approach as opposed to something like, you know, not even Outer Wilds, but even Fallout. Like it's definitely smaller in that sense, and
Yeah,
that's something that I do like want to get into. I do want to get into a smaller Western RPG where you don't really have to care about building yourself so much as just
yeah.
exploration. And I don't know if it's big on that, but that would be the main thing I'd wonder.
So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. So I'm like at like the very last section, but I like to do everything and get all the gear. And I'm only like 40 hours in, and so that's probably going to be the high end of it, which is like that's a long time, but for a big open world game like this, that's actually like not that long. So I for someone like you, Danreb, I think Avowed is a perfect like first time Western RPG game. Yeah,
Gotcha. And it's all in first person, right?
you can play in third as well. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Gotcha.
Nice.
yeah. It's fun. I highly recommend it. We don't do scores on Temple of Geek yet, but if I were to score it, I would give this an 8. Um, it knows what it wants to be and it executes it flawlessly. There are some quality of life stuff that I would like to fix. I would like a little more depth in terms of character builds. There's like 2 builds that are like really really good and like extremely overpowered, and everything else is kind of just boring. Um, and the world itself can be a bit not very populated. Once you kill enemies, they're gone for the whole game. There's no
Oh,
respawn, which depending on the type of player you are, that's could be good or bad.
okay.
But yeah, Avowed. I loved it very much. We will now transition to another game. I haven't touched this at all. Kurosh and Danrib, you guys are both playing this, and that is Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Danrib, kick us off. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, so like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. I got this at launch and I've platinumed it. That's how much I love this game. And to be quite frank, there is a lot of jank here and it is a B game. But I love B games. We definitely need our palate cleansers. And, after playing, the long games that I've played this year, mainly Trails Through Daybreak and a bunch of others, yeah, I definitely needed this sort of palate cleanser. So this is a direct follow up to Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which was a huge RPG last year. It was definitely in my top 5 of releases. And the main difference is that um, it's a different main character, and you're going from a turn based battle system back to the traditional beat 'em up action based battle system that the Like a Dragon series, or better known as the Yakuza series, is known for. So the character you're using is Goro Majima. He has been in every Yakuza game up to this point. He made his debut in Yakuza 1, but he's also one of the main characters in Yakuza 0. And he is known as the Mad Dog of Shimano. This guy is unhinged. But at the same time, he does have a soft spot. When you first learn about him, he owns a cabaret and stuff like that. You don't have to know any of that, by the way. So it's you can go into this game without having played a Yakuza game, which is, I believe, what Kurosh, can talk to you in a little bit. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. So the game begins with Majima being washed up in some random island in Hawaii, and then all of a sudden, this kid finds him, and he just all of they have an automatic attachment. Like you find out that this kid's dad is sort of a deadbeat on the island, um, and at the same time, like Majima is not exactly somebody you want to grow attached to either. I mean, this guy is like one of the heads of the Yakuza. He's a very dangerous person. As I mentioned a while ago, he is completely unhinged. So yeah, he does have amnesia. You don't know why that happens until much later in the game, but that's not important. So one of the main reasons why I loved Infinite Wealth last year was because it had a very accurate depiction of Honolulu, Hawaii. I don't know if you guys have been, but Honolulu is definitely one of my favorite places to vacation, and they got it to a T. There are some real businesses there. The most obvious one being an ABC store. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but that's basically 7-Eleven. And in Hawaii, there are way more ABC stores than you would think of a 7-Eleven in any part of the world. And you can walk into them, you can buy stuff. There's Hilo Hari, which is my favorite place to get Hawaiian shirts and whatever they may be. There's even the big mall that they have. Uh, the main difference is that they changed some of the names. Some of the stores are real, but like for example, Waikiki Beach is changed to Aloha Beach. But when you're walking through it, all the surfboards they have in the game, they're actually there when you walk there in person, and it's definitely a cool tourist trap when you actually do that. And the main difference is that walking around Waikiki is pretty fun, but when you're walking around Waikiki in Yakuza, you're going to be attacked by gangsters left and right, and that's a common thing in the Yakuza series. And as I mentioned before, like the game is action-based, beat 'em up style. So instead of the turn-based stuff, you're just running around, pressing square, triangle, whatever it may be. And it feels a little bit more limiting because in the traditional Yakuza games, you normally have like 3 classes to choose from, which will change your style. Here, you only have 2. You have the Mad Dog style, which is your typical, uh, gangster Yakuza, punch kick, whatever it may be. And then you have Sea Dog. When you're the Sea Dog, you have the pirate cutlasses. He's dressed up in, Captain Pirate cosplay, and you're just slashing the heck out of dudes. And it is an absolutely fun way to go about things. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you don't need to have played a previous Yakuza game to understand what's going on. If you did play Infinite Wealth, you'll definitely have a greater appreciation because it takes place immediately after you find out why a whole bunch of Japanese people are in Hawaii and stuff like that. And you're also, just jumping in from various places that you did visit in the previous game. So this game is a gaiden. It's
Like a
a very
spin-off.
common thing with Japanese games where they create a guidance so that they can be able to reuse a whole bunch of assets, and this game is absolutely unapologetic for that. A lot of the side stories in this game actually come from Infinite Wealth, and you come across the same people. Like you have this one guy who is known for putting on theater stage shows, and I don't know if you met him yet, Kurosh, but he has a tiger in his cage, and he's talking about how it's going to be awesome. And all of a sudden, you turn around, the tiger is out of his cage. So how do you beat this side quest? You got to kill the tiger. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't kill it, but you got to beat him up. You got to beat up the bear and whatever it may be. And like everything about Yakuza is absolutely crazy. But one thing about this game though is that it's really short. You can take anywhere between 12 and 20 hours to finish it.
Oh wow!
And yeah, it's just a great palate cleanser I needed. So yeah,
You mentioned reusing assets and stuff like that from
yeah.
Like a Dragon. Do you find that to be like a bad thing, or does this do enough new to where it is like a new, fresh experience?
I don't find it to be a bad thing at all because, as I mentioned, like I love B games and we need that kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That being said, this also isn't a full $70 game. I
Oh,
forget whether it's 50 or 60, but it's definitely on the more affordable side. But yeah, as far as like getting what I wanted out of it, this does continue the story. You eventually like find out more behind the scenes stuff of what was happening in Infinite Wealth,
hmm.
and like it's another long name, like a dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. That was more background leading to Infinite Wealth from Yakuza Like a Dragon. So the main thing that I want to mention is that Yakuza 7, Yakuza Like a Dragon, introduced a new character. His name is uh, uh, Ichiban Kasuga. And throughout the entire series, you were using Kazuma Kiryu.
Mhm.
So you changed it. It actually is sort of a passing of the torch, and this game kind of just brings back Majima, who you only used in Zero and a couple other games before, and it's just a way to kind of bring the fans all back together, but at the same time realize that we're entering a new era of Yakuza.
Mhm.
And the other cool thing about it is that not only were you switching to a different character, it becomes a full on turn based RPG, which was actually how I started. My first Yakuza was actually Yakuza 3, which is a bad thing because there it's if you go in blind, it's totally dumb. The only reason why I jumped into it, it's off to the side, but the only reason why I jumped into it was because I beat Sleeping Dogs and I loved it, and I saw Yakuza and I looked like Sleeping Dogs, and I was like, this could be fun. It wasn't. It's a very different game, but it's still fun. So yeah, Kurosh, I know you're playing it right now, and I know you've never played a Yakuza game before, so go ahead and tell me what you think.
Yeah, I have never played a Yakuza properly before. I've always been interested. I every time I see, I think the most on a surface level from the outside looking in, you see is the out of context disco or random mini game or something occurring, and it's juxtaposed by these Yakuza members, and you're like, what? That's silly, or that's odd, or that's over the top. And I'm always like, there's got to be more to it. And everyone that loves it is so passionate about it that I'm like, I want to enter it. And I've dabbled a little bit with the last with Like a Dragon, I believe the first one with Ichiban.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't made too much progress just because I know JRPGs are typically, and it's always like a commitment of time. You have to
Yeah.
invest, hours upon hours. And so it's on the back burner. It's in my infinite backlog. But when this one came around, a couple of combination of things just really allured it to me. I think what you said, I was hearing it in the advertisement, was like it's a more bite-sized kind of package for folks to jump into, is a little bit more on the action light side. So it's just like you can just go in and just kind of have a silly time. And then the pirate stuff plus the added advertisement for, I think you and me, Danreb, are one of our favorite AEW stars, Samoa Joe, was being featured in it. And I'm like, okay, if there's ever one for me to kind of like really sink my teeth into, it was this one. And I think you put it best with the we need B games. This game unabashedly and confidently wears that as a badge of pride, and it owns it. It fully, confidently is aware of what it is, and it does it so well. It is silly. It is over the top. The action is light. It doesn't trying to overcomplicate, but it is fun. It kind of reminds me in the level of complexity that if you remember back in the day, the Lord of the Rings games, there's a lot of hack and slashing, but you could always just like, hey, I want to unlock a few extra moves. I want to do this cool, crazy Hurricanrana with my blades. So I'm just having a good old time. I'm just like going through all the different islands, and I don't know the history, like you said, and it hasn't been too difficult to just keep up with the pace of what's been going on. I understand enough of what's going on in the present to really just feel like, okay, I'm along for the ride. He has amnesia. I also don't know what's gone. We're in this together, much.
Yeah,
And
like if you're enjoying the way the story is being presented, that's actually classic Yakuza. The
okay,
way they go about their twists, the way they go about mentioning various characters, it's true to what it's always been in the whole series. It's funny because to the uninitiated, Yakuza is a really serious thing. It is, but it isn't. Like if you were just to beeline all the main components of the game, yeah, it's pretty serious. But when you do all of the random side quests, it becomes absolutely BS insane, and I can't recommend it more. One thing that really made Infinite Wealth special, as I mentioned, was that it's sort of a passing of the torch from the old character to the new character, and you sort of go through all of these memories that you had in previous games. And at that point, I hadn't finished them all yet, but I was like, wow, like this really is like a love letter to people who have really enjoyed it in the past.
yeah. The characters, Majima's one that I was like, I understood there was history. That guy you were talking about, the dad, I got strong like Gilmore Girls. Like he went down a dark path and he's just now stuck in Hawaii for whatever reason, and he just has strong like that the character from
What
Gilmore
was
Girls
hard
vibe.
for me is he looked like Deacon from Days Gone, and I'm like, I know.
I can see that
Yeah.
too. But I love the characters. The pirate aspect of it is hilarious too, because yeah, like Danner was saying, the combat is either you're one of two styles, and when you go to the swashbuckling style, I feel like Cervantes from Soul Calibur sometimes.
Oh,
And
good
I'm
point.
like, I'm just into this. This is just a full silly time, and it's just unabashed by what it is, and it's very freeing, and it's also very nice given in the way that you were saying too, Danner, of like I just came off of Monster Hunter, which is a very menu intensive, skill intensive. Like you're under trying to make sure you have to be aware of so much.
Mhm.
I don't feel like I have to be aware of next to nothing. I just can just enjoy this, and the story just takes me. And to be honest, like that's more than what I've wanted from a game from the Like a Dragon series, because now I have a little bit more of a stake and I have a little bit more of an understanding and footing in this world. I feel a little bit more inclined and able to enter into that world and go back to Like a Dragon and just chip away at it, because I do want to understand more of that. I may be a little bit off here because I typically don't like to start at the beginning. I like to kind of like dive into somewhere in the middle, get myself lost in the thick of it, and then I like to backtrack. I did that with Final Fantasy remake. That was my first entry into the Final Fantasy VII. I've never played the prior ones, and I feel like the way I approached this,
You mean
interested
rebirth
me.
or remake?
Remake was that was my first time doing any Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
So that intrigued me enough to want to go back and learn about the original. Like I never had an entry into that. I feel like with this in a similar fashion, it's interested me to go back and to understand more of just the Yakuza proper lore of
I will
what.
say starting at remake does make sense, but starting from rebirth and then going back to remake, like,
Yeah,
I'm not that much of a sicko. But it's a good time. It's not here for a long time. I think I'm like 2/3 of the way through,
Mhm.
and I'm having a blast. The shit.
Really long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a long one. But it's a good time. It's very lighthearted, and the ship stuff is fun too. I'll throw that in. So good
Oh,
good
yeah,
stuff.
and
I don't know, Miles, if you had any questions
just
for
to
either of us.
quickly like go on the lighthearted stuff. You mentioned Monster Hunter earlier. There is one comment. First of all, I am glad to jump into this game from Monster Hunter. It is a whole lot less intense in that regard. But I will say there is one commonality, and like it is weird because like I am somebody that works to bring video games to children, but like the kid in Monster Hunter and then the kid Noah in Pirate Yakuza, like these. No, I don't like these kids at all. No, what are? Oh man, like the one thing
Tanner's
I do
like,
like
get off
about
my
Noah
lawn.
is that he is devoted to calling the tiger a cat. And that's
Yeah.
the one thing I like about him. But other than that, I don't want to see these kids at all in these games. So
Yeah. If you're confused, he's referring to Nata from Monster Hunter Wilds, who
I
is
didn't say his
just
name.
insufferable.
Him, Chadley, and Noah.
Yeah, Chadley from Final Fantasy.
I
Yeah,
don't read these kids.
from Final Fantasy 7. Yeah. Okay, yeah, Like a Dragon, Pirate Dragons in Hawaii. The fact that you guys are saying that it's big, dumb, fun, mindless to an extent, and short, I'm very interested. What will get me more over the top is this on Game Pass?
No,
I don't think so.
no,
I
it's
will
not.
not pay for this. Sorry, but I am very intrigued by it. I'm very intrigued by it.
Most of the series is on Game Pass, though.
Yeah. I saw that. So I'm sure this will be eventually. It's only been out a couple weeks. Okay, let's move on. So this is one that we've all been playing because we kind of have to because of the nature of it. This is Split Fiction. This is the new joint from Hazelight and Joseph Ferris, notable Oscars lover. So yeah, if you've ever played it takes
The other word for
two.
love.
Yeah, the other word for love, exactly. Yeah, so this is the follow-up to It Takes Two. It's a co-op kind of puzzle platformer with like a narrative focus. Yeah, we've all been playing this. Me and Kurosh have been playing together. Danreb, I believe you've been playing with your brother.
Yes.
Right on. How far are you guys in? How long have you played? What are your thoughts so far on Split Fiction?
We're about 8 hours in. Most reviews that I've read said they're over. It's a 14-hour game, and really enjoying it. I don't really want to say where I'm at because where we're at, like the story definitely got a little bit more serious.
We'll try to be as spoiler-free as possible as well.
Yeah, the story has definitely gotten more serious from where we're at. But I will say, It Takes Two was my game of the year in 2021, and this one is more of the same. As a result, like I'm not as surprised as much as I was with It Takes Two, but there are definitely some moments in this game that get me in similar ways. I'm loving the Easter eggs or the ones that I've seen so far that call back to previous games. My favorite moments so far include that hot dog, which you guys might have seen in the Game Awards. More things happen. We won't talk about that because we want to just leave that for you.
The hot dog part is so good.
But yeah,
It's so good.
the the best thing about like Haze Lights games in general is the fact that they lean into so many genres and they do a really really good job showing off their polish. I likened It Takes Two to a lot of things that Nintendo has done. We have said the same thing about Astrobot, but again, with what Haze Light has done with Split Fiction with the genre bending is uh, just totally insane. What I just finished was sort of a action-based Metroidvania kind of way to go about it, where you're actually aiming your gun to do certain things. Another one of my favorite parts was that motorcycle chase scene where one person drives the motorcycle and then the other person has to deal with captcha on the phone. And
Oh my god, that was so funny. It was so funny. And there's also an Akira slide in that part. Yeah, sorry, keep going. Yeah, that part was amazing.
yeah, it's and like I have like too many things to mention because I didn't take any notes, but what I want to do is you guys go ahead and talk about it, and I will bask in your glory.
Sure. Kurosh, go ahead. Take it away.
I don't want to ruin. There's so many moments in this game, and it doesn't waste a lot of time getting you to there.
Yeah.
I feel like right out the gate, we just once it kind of sets the tone of the story up, you just kind of go and you know what kind of ride you're in for, and each moment is just a little different and doing a little bit of its own thing, and it's doing its own genre or styles and plays around with it, and it's either very funny or very engaging and interesting and exciting to the point where I just felt like the rhythm and the pace has been thus far, and I feel like we're all I know is that there's about 8 chapters and we're about somewhere around the halfway point.
Yeah.
From our Myles and I's experience, and the pace has felt good. Like I have not felt like anything really has dragged on. There's been one or two puzzles that I don't think lend themselves as well to online co-op play.
Yes.
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 And that's we can expand a little bit more on that, but that's my real only criticism is the gameplay is first and foremost, and it makes it a very enjoyable experience, and it's actually enhanced because it's like you're sharing it with someone. I'm not just sitting there laughing alongside. I'm laughing there alongside Myles, and we're like, "Oh my god, what just happened here?"
Yeah.
You know, like all this stuff. So, I love that so much. There's been a couple like you guys have been saying some very specific moments. I'm like, I won't forget that. Like the Akira side and the other moments I won't go into, but I feel like players own it to themselves. They do such a good job catering this to being. I know it's always like, oh, you need another player. They do a very good job accommodating that. Like, you don't need a second copy of the game. It gives a second copy of the game, and you set that up. So it's a big thing for me. Danreb, did you have a thought?
Yeah, like one thought I want to quickly mention, especially when we talk about the difficulty and the gameplay, is I don't know about you guys, but I've been scrolling through my social media and I've been seeing a lot of this game, and I've been seeing a whole lot more It Takes Two as of late, and I'm seeing like people play with their partners and significant others who aren't gamers.
Yeah.
It Takes Two was I still played with my brother. We're both very experienced as far as games go, but I definitely felt like this game or It Takes Two was a whole lot easier than what we're going through with Split Fiction right
100%.
now.
Yes.
And it's funny watching these Instagram reels of people in playing It Takes Two just struggling with the platforming. And Split Fiction is way more than just platforming. So like, one sort of a buyer beware thing is I would hope that the person you're playing with is also a gamer, just because there is a lot of both hand-eye coordination and just being able to understand the intricacies of puzzles. Like this game has more Zelda puzzles than It Takes Two, and that could be a deal breaker for some people.
Yeah. So Kurosh and I are both capital G gamers. That's what we do all the time. There have been a handful of puzzles where like we don't know what to do, and when we do figure it out, it's like hard to get the timing. But Kurosh touched on it earlier, where a lot of these puzzles are timing based and like really like you just have to be on the ball. We dealt with a lot of latency and connectivity issues to where like I thought, or what I saw on my screen was his character doing the thing, but he was like lagged behind by like 2-3 seconds to where it's like frustrating because we both think we're doing the puzzle on time, but the internet's a huge barrier there. Is that what you were about to say, Crush?
Yeah, it was a lot of that latency of like, yeah, the timing. And it tries to do a good job of, you're sharing the screen. I should be able to see what you're seeing, but with the online aspect of it, I think you lose whatever we're both seeing there. um and the other thing I wanted to touch on was, what, just briefly on that note of like how elements of it can be more challenging, is I agree very firmly that it is doing a lot more than just one or two little jumps and puzzles. But to its credit, and this is something that you pointed out to me, Miles, that I wasn't even paying attention. It was just, it felt intuitive, and I found it impressive and worth noting, was the lack of really any HUD. Like,
Yep.
there's not, like, if you take a moment to notice, it's like there's not much going on, and that is the other element of, a lot of times, for people that aren't as familiar with games, that is very daunting. Is there's so much going on the screen, and they don't know what they're supposed to be paying attention to. I think that element they did really well, and I think they were like, let's tweak it up a little bit with the complexity of stuff. So
Mhm.
I just wanted, yeah, to that point of like challenges and difficulty there. That was some of the elements I wanted to touch on.
My biggest gripe, I think this game is like very close to perfect. The story is, for me so far, being halfway, is pretty weak. I like the performances. I think the voice acting is good, but the story just, it's a story about writers, and I don't feel like it has a lot of depth to it. So far, all I've gotten from it is two writers arguing that their genre is more fun than the other. There is a lot of backstory with each character, with like their own personal traumas and stuff. But it's lightly touched on. But I assume it's going to be like the main focus as we get further in. I think the writing is the weakest part of the game. Danreb, you said later on it gets darker and a bit heavier. Do I need to manage my expectations, or am I going to be like pleasantly surprised at the depth of the story? What do you think?
You probably will be pleasantly surprised. I do think the dialogue improves tenfold. I wouldn't say the writing is very strong either, though.
Okay. Is it a spoiler talking about what you said? No. I almost read the spoiler. No, I don't think so. Just yeah, if you want to talk about it, just don't get too specific.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
So as we mentioned, like, well, one of these characters writes fantasy, one of these characters writes sci-fi, and they basically, like, piggyback off of each other. The person that writes sci-fi is very like to herself. She's there for a very specific reason. And then the person who writes all about the fantasy, she's definitely a more whimsical person. She's more open-minded. She's more excited about the fact that, like, she's there in that moment. But at the end of the day, like, they're there because of a special project happening within their world, and, like, they're writers. So what's happening is uh, the company that brought them about is like taking their ideas. So it's sort of an anti AI narrative, and obviously, like, with that being a big topic in the gaming industry, that made me a whole lot more interested in what was going on, because when the game was initially introduced, and I talked about it with Myles and Kurosh when we were doing our fantasy thing, was um, I'm excited for this game. It was definitely like one of my most anticipated games of the year because of what I know Hazelight for. But the characters weren't interesting to me, and I still felt that at the beginning. But I got to a point where I care a little bit more now, just because of that little detail.
I wanted to chime in on this as well. I feel like it's less for me how, not necessarily how poor the story is or the characters feel, but more so in comparison to how great the game feels. The story feels kind of in an okay spot. It isn't blowing me away the same way the rest of it is, and that like highlights it that much more, that difference to me a little bit of like, everything else is just hitting for me moment to moment, but then when they take the moments to do the story beats, I feel like I'm kind of just like chilling. I'm like, okay, get me to the next thing. I don't I'm not as engaged as I think I could be or should be. I think everything you're saying, Danrub, is very poignant and very, I feel like they could have also, I wonder if there was, I would love to have been in like a be in the room or fly in the room if they were considering doing something more on the nose of the gaming industry, and had it been, instead of authors and writers for in if it had been game developers.
Yeah, that would have been
Can you
interesting.
imagine?
Because there's so many genres of games that they do in this game too. It would have been like a self commentary, and I'm like, I still think it's relevant. It's not that to say it's not, but I think that would have been like very on the nose, to the point that I think a lot more people would have vibed it. Maybe they do it down the road somewhere, but I'm wondering, yeah, just that difference in how the level of appreciation I have for the gameplay versus the story, it just highlights it a little bit more for me.
Yeah, and just quickly going back on the gameplay and the mechanics of itself, which, as we keep saying, is fantastic. It's easy to make the comparison to Nintendo. I did that with It Takes Two. All of us did that with Astrobot. But if I were to compare this work to like something else, and I don't want to say it as an insult because it'll sound like that, this kind of feels like budget Naughty Dog, just because at the end of the day it's a narrative story, but there's a whole lot more gameplay involved. But there are a whole lot of interesting set pieces here. As far as set pieces go, that goes into level design. And the biggest thing for me is the bosses. All of the bosses have annoying, stupid catchphrases, and that just adds to the charm.
Yes. Yeah. One thing about the writing that they do nail, is the humor. The game's hilarious. And that comes through with the hot dog part. It comes through with the motorcycle chase where one person's on their phone, you have to unlock it and skip all the ads. It was so good, so funny. The game's hilarious. I'm just kind of waiting for the story to get a little more deep and kind of I don't know, just better. Kurosh.
Yes, I have a question for Danreb. So Myles and I, like we were talking about the gacha versus the bike. We kind of bounce back and forth. It lets you swap who's playing who.
Yes.
And I thought that both
the game lets you swap, or
well, you have to leave and then
you're like, who wants to be in what controller?
You're not stuck, which is nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we kind of got a chance to like, oh, how do I want to try this character a little bit? I want to try that character. Were you, when you were playing, were you always one character? And how was your experience?
I was actually going to answer. I mean, I was actually going to ask that question too. First of all, we haven't changed characters yet. The only reason why we've changed characters was because we were stuck on a puzzle and we thought we were smarter than the other when we were both being stupid.
Who are you playing as?
Actually, it was mainly me being stupid. I'm using Mio, and my brother has been using, what's your name? Zoe.
Mio is the sci-fi one.
Yeah,
Zoe is the
I've been using the sci-fi girl, and then my brother has been using Zoe. And it's interesting because when we were playing It Takes Two, whenever we started a session, we'd switch our characters. This time around, we just put the PlayStation on sleep, and then just continue from there. So we have the opportunity to change. So we haven't actually like turned the game off and turned it on. We've just continued. But that is something that I wanted to do. I think we're at a point where I don't want to do that anymore, just because like I'm used to being on the left and I don't want to go that kind of thing. I'm player one. That's just what it is.
The funny thing that keeps happening is every time we switch, we're like, "Hey, we should switch. You try this character."
Yeah.
Myles is like, "I want to do what you're doing."
I like the sword. I want to use the sword.
I want to do the captcha, and then like I'm just not a big fan of monkeys. So when I had to be the gorilla, I'm like, dang it, I want to be the fairy. So yeah. Also, in that level where you're the gorilla, you also have to be the swimming critter, and I hate swimming in games.
That's the exact comment I made. So one of the number one things I hate in any video game is water levels and swimming. And you swim a lot in Split Fiction, and I hate it. Not that it's bad or well designed. This is just a me problem, but I hate it. And yeah, there's just a lot of water. It's not as like in depth or like exploratory or anything as what I would usually hate. But there's a lot of swimming.
Yeah. It's not terrible in this game though.
It's not. It's really not. Yeah.
There's this chase scene that you'll actually, maybe your opinion will change, but I loved it. It's been one of my favorite parts of the game so far. So.
Sweet. Yeah, Split Fiction, Hazelight hit another home run. This game is incredible. Final thoughts before we move on to our next fun thing.
I would say for me, the first half of this year, we're in March and it's already been impressing the crap out of me. one after the other. The gameplay of this, bar none, if you can find someone to play alongside, you both are going to have a great time. Or yeah, you both will have a great time. I definitely think it's worthwhile to give a shot and to play. And I may be wrong on this, but I believe it's not even like a $70 game either.
It's 50.
50.
It's 50.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
And yeah, just real quick before we move on, if you're having a hard time finding a co-op partner, there is online matchmaking. If you buy it, then you have one full ass copy to give to another person. And then Hazelight opened up their Discord channel as like an LFG, like, hey, help me play the game. So
They really went all out with this one.
they very good community
Man.
management so far. Okay, let's move on. This I'm very excited about.
Real quick.
Oh, please.
Yeah, like I know that I mentioned that it's so far it's not as good as It Takes Two for me, but this is my game of the year so far this year.
Okay, right on.
I'll go that far.
I think at the end of the show, so mine so far is Avowed, yours so far is Split Fiction. Kurosh, at the end of the show, I want to get your game of the year so far. So try to remind me, okay? Moving on, Kurosh, speaking of I'm super jealous of this. You got hands-on demo with Clair Obscura Expedition 33. Tell me every single detail. I cannot wait for this game.
I'm out.
No spoilers.
So this is a game by what is it? Sandfall Interactive. I believe it's one of their first like big games that they're launching. They're a European studio, turn-based RPG. The world in this fantasy world is set to every year this paintress shows up and paints a number counting down. And so the prior year 34, everyone that was 34 years old just disappears, Thanos Stap-esque. And now the number is 33, and so then you take the place of a bunch of characters that are very invested in stopping this from further occurring. And so you have Gustav, you have Loon, you have a few other characters that you take as a party, and you go on this expedition for the 33rd year. And yeah, so this demo, it's a short demo, but it's enough of a palette, kind of like a taste of what the game is. You jump in, you take the kind of the first story beats of the game, and man, everything leading up to it, I was like very optimistic about. It almost seemed too good to be true. I feel like in a lot of ways it's reaffirmed and validated a lot of the feelings I've had of how good the turn-based combat feels and what it is. It is very dynamic in its turn-based energy in that as you're doing the moment-to-moment, kind of like almost Persona 5-esque, where you can swap to a gun and shoot a thing, and then you can cast a magic and do a thing, and there's moments of that feels just very dynamic in the UI and the UX. But then on top of that, there's a real-time element to it of if you time it just right, you can perfect dodge, or you can parry, or you can double down on an attack to emphasize or mitigate damage of some sort. And I have been loving that. Like, that is the meat and potatoes of this game to me, and that part it nails really well. What I'm kind of, I guess, optimistic about now is I think as long as it keeps delivering on that front in the terms of the moment-to-moment gameplay, we're going to see an amazing game coming before us. The world they create, the visuals they have, the atmosphere they have, all feel like it's right for a great RPG. I don't think they've been advertising it to be anything like a super lengthy, crazy long one. I think it's going to be kind of in the Avowed-esque from what I've understanding of it and what they've advertised of it. So that even more makes me excited for this. Of just give me this little, kind of nice, meaty, springtime RPG that I could just sink my teeth into. I think the two biggest things, if I were to err any side of caution or concern, or areas that could drop the ball potentially, is the story. I think it's very ripe with potential. Again, the age, and honestly, it could be very poignant in today's climate of, the older years are dying off, and the burden of adulthood is being put on the younger and younger generations. I think if they really dive into that and really like dissect it and explore that, there's a lot to be seen there as a story. It kind of feels like a reverse Children of Men, if you're familiar with that film. Yeah. The other aspect of it that I'm really worried about, so I feel like, if the story kind of nails it, we're good. But if not, that could be an error of like, oh, I just don't care. I'm not as invested. The other area that I'm worried about potentially is if the fights themselves are good, but like the in between each fights is dull or empty, that could be an area where it kind of drops the ball a little bit. Not necessarily makes it a bad game, but doesn't like knock it out of the park. I mean, like that is always a balance. Like, one thing that you're really good at. How do you make the in betweens feel engaging? How do you make them exciting and keep that rhythm and pace going? So those are like my high level general thoughts. There's a lot to really delve into with the skill tree and the RPGs. You can make them your own characters in a lot of way, so you have some level of agency in that. And yeah, as long as they keep delivering on that front and don't have any like errors or ball drops, I think we got another potential. This might answer part of my question for game of the year
Yeah.
contender so far.
So you say you're concerned about in between combat. As so I'm just looking at the most recent trailer.
Yeah.
They're showing off like a Final Fantasy X or like 7 or 8 style overworld map, with just like stuff on. It's like top down. It's like a small character and stuff, kind of reminiscent of that age. Did you get to play around with that at all? Was it in depth? Was there stuff to see and do? And also, is there random battles, or are they on the screen with you?
So the random. I didn't get a chance to do any of the overworld traversal thus far in the demo. I haven't finished the demo, but I played about 2 to 3 hours of it,
Oh wow.
and a lot of it was tutorials and kind of expanding on, this is what level design looks like, this is what abilities can lend each other, you can amp or buff one to really expand on it with the other. So it was really exploring the combat. The parts that made me worried was as I was running from like one little section of a forest to another, it was just running and not much else happening. There wasn't a lot of like hidden pathways, there was a lot of like crazy traversal. It's just kind of like, okay, just go forward to the next thing. And again, it's hard to tell with the tutorial because they're not really doing much with that in the tutorial. Typically, it's just like, hey, we want to kind of give you a slice of the world and the combat. I think that's what they were trying to advertise and showcase here. But if they don't have engaging story or different characters, I'm very curious what that overworld looks like, and
Okay.
I hope that there's a chance to like, if you want to beeline it, you can, but you could have maybe side quests. I think that
Right.
would lend itself to me of like, I really want to this world is so full of like, I want to know it, I want to feel it, I feel like it feels lived in, and it feels like there could be a lot of things there.
How is the voice acting? The story seems like it can just be relatively straightforward, unless, like you said, they touch on like the real world components of like younger generations taking over.
Tack on, they do have a star-studded cast, so I'm wondering if they had
Yes.
an
So
opportunity to actually like.
Ben Starr, Charlie Cox, Andy Serkis, Shalinix. Like this cast is insane for this tiny team, and it's their first game. Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
The one thing that's funny to me, I haven't had the chance to meet Ben Starr or Andy Serkis's characters, but Charlie Cox plays, I believe, Gustav, who's like one of the first characters you really engage with. And what's funny is you look at Gustav and you're like,
It's
you're
Robert Pattinson.
You're Robert Pattinson. Like, it is like hard. I was making the thumbnail for our episode today. I was like, I'm just put Robert Pattinson here, and it just felt. But the voice work is very good. I'll say that Charlie Cox does a good job. He brings a lot of energy to it. It feels the music is very engaging. There's a few little moments with him that I feel like there's a lot of haunting that like you want to understand, hopefully, with more of maybe backstory or struggles he's gone through. I want to see that explored. But the performance has been great so far.
Right on. Danreb, do you have any follow-ups?
Yeah, I know you spoke at length about it because that was what the demo pretty much was. But I just want to hear more about how and why the battle system was so fun, especially it being turn-based. And if like you know, we've all played our fair share of JRPGs. I was wondering if there was like one game's combat system you can really compare it to really give us a feel.
I'd say it reminds me a lot of like a Persona 5 or a Metaphor. Both fairly recent in my memory. It's very like just changing from, hey, I'm gonna go to my items versus I'm gonna do an attack. It does this kind of zoom in and changing of like what you see on the screen, and it feels very dynamic and fluid. Of like each one of these feels like it's got a style to it that I like. And then when you have a moment to do your combat or receive the action, it like really gets you right in the meat of it, and like the camera kind of dials back or dials in to add an extra oomph to it. Added to that would be the real timeness of it. Of it kind of, it has a little A circle, and as you're about to do like a big magic attack, you press A at the right time, you'll do an extra 20 damage.
Oh, QTEs.
Yeah, all of those. And also if they're coming to stab you, it's kind of, there's a timing with each enemy that you'll learn as you play, which I appreciate because they're all a little different. Of this monster, when it does this attack, it's going to stall a little bit before it does its stab, and if you time it right, you can parry. The parries then can reward you with additional action points on your turn.
Oh.
The evasions can reward you in other ways of just like mitigating damage or anything else. So you can really lean into one or the other, or you can just take the damage. Like, it's not necessarily punishing you any more than what the game would normally do, but it's rewarding you for doing more if you'd like to.
It's sounding like Paper Mario for adults.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, like a mix of like Mario RPG with Persona. That's pretty cool. You mentioned you can build out each character how you want. So are there different classes? Are there like recommended stats for each character? Like, for example, this guy has a higher attack. He should be your DPS warrior type, or like a tank or a healer. Like, is that kind of thing present here?
So the time I've spent with it, I was just spending a little bit of time today to just to look at it in an expanded view. But I've played with two of the characters in a party so far, and I believe you can have up to four. When you level up with a character, there's two different pages for leveling up. There's one where it's stat points, so your vitality, your defense, your luck, and a couple other base like standard kind of stat points to areas that are pretty. They're uniform. It's the same stat bracket for each character. So if I feel like one character is much more of a glass cannon, I'm going to buff up their vitality or defense.
Mm.
If someone's more of a damage dealer, I'm going to really put all their energy into might to just make their attacks just hit that much harder. Or if I want the damage dealer to really just lean into damage and say, screw it, you're going to get hit a lot, and that's fine. I'll just go harder on that. I can choose how I divvy up the stat blocks for any character.
Are
And
you
it
able
looks
to
like
respec as well?
yeah, that's why exactly what I was going to get into was there's also, it looked like from what I could tell, an icon that was almost, it uses a language within the world that it has, but it looked like it was a respec button to potentially reset that. And it looks like it uses a item or currency that you can buy at a shop or something. And then on the other side of it, you have your talent points, and it shows that each character has a unique set of skills that is unique to them. So there's the sorceress, and she leans into elemental abilities. She can either lean hard into lightning, lean hard into fire, lean hard into ice, lean into a little bit of healing, medical kind of support class, or any combination. Like, you can kind of just be like, okay, this one's 2 points, this one's 1 point. I want a little bit of that with a little bit of this. I don't know if you can fully complete that tree, or if you're gonna constantly be maybe respecking that or leaning that in the towards whatever gear you have, because there is another page where it's like, oh, I got these items and they buff this, or they're gonna give me more crit damage.
Okay, sweet.
So it does enough. It's not like it's not insanely in depth, but it's enough of like, oh, this feels like a standard level of customizability to really make it your own, honestly.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things in JRPGs is like building out my party how I want with like specific roles. So yeah, I'm really hoping that that's here. So
And that's where I think it reminded me, at least I guess in recency, of Metaphor, because I feel like the characters still very much are the characters,
yeah,
but how you want them in the combat and how you want them to behave in moment to moment, you're in control of, and you have agency over it. And so
awesome.
that's what everything thus far is telling me. I hope that it remains the case.
Alrighty, any final questions, thoughts on Clair Obscura Expedition 33 hands-on? Kurosh, thank you for handling that for us. That was awesome.
Yeah, no, it was kind of a surprise to me too, and I was just happy to spend some time and get a chance to, like, I wanted to see if there's anything you guys have on your mind. It kind of feels like it's taking what Danreb, you and I, like, and all three of us really are like jiving with JRPG side, but with a kind of a European Western twist to it as well. So I hope that, to me, that marriage of those two kind of genres blends here in a way that I haven't really seen before. It feels kind of refreshing.
Yeah, it's like I'm a little jealous, but I'm not, because, like, I'm jealous that you get to play it, but like I'm not jealous because, like, it's a JRPG, and I'm not going to be able to continue my progress when I get the real game for sure. So it's like, I don't want to
That's
have
how
my
I am.
time go
I
go
don't
go
play
somewhere else.
demos for that
Um,
exact reason.
yeah, but my other thing is that we just talked about it, like the whole like JRPGness of it. Does it feel like one?
In the combat, it definitely does. Like it's hard not to think of JRPGs when I think of turn-based combat. Like that's where I see it more than anywhere else. Um, it's got a very European flavor and taste. As I'm watching little bits of clip of like unique kind of just like artistic styles to it, of the nuances of the architecture of the world that they're bringing, feels very European in that sense. So
Yeah.
it feels like to me of like what I'm seeing is one and what I'm feeling is another. And
Mm.
I am like here for it. Like I'm beyond excited. I'm to that same point that you bring up of the demo. I'm like, I want to play more so I could speak more to it and share more. But at the same time, I'm like, I want to wait a month and get into
Yeah,
this
like,
next
I don't
one.
want to do the same part again for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Clair Obscura Expedition 33. If you're interested in this and want something similar, I would recommend Sea of Stars. It might be something similar to this.
Sea of Stars is great.
That game rules. Okay, let's move on. Steam Next Fest just happened recently. There's a lot of cool indie games coming out, a lot of demos that you two have played. I have not had the time to touch any of them. So, Danreb, if you want to start, what should people be looking out for from Steam Next Fest? And yeah, take it away.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't know how much time is left, so you got to be like really quick with that. But the main thing is that I downloaded a few demos. I've only played about 3, so I'll go ahead and just go over what I downloaded real quick. I've downloaded Haste Broken Worlds, which is
Hold
kind of
on,
like
real quick. Do you mean that they're only around for a limited amount of
the
time?
demos are
Oh, okay.
timed. So if you
Got it.
download them, but like you don't play them, they're gonna like not work.
Didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. There's Haste Broken Worlds, which is kind of like a Sega endless runner kind of game. There's Koira. There's Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3. And then so those are the 3 games I've played. The games that I haven't played that I've downloaded are Wheel World, which is like a kind of open world biking RPG, not RPG, but just a biking sim. Wonder Stop, which comes out in like a few days, so I probably won't bother talking about that one. And then there's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown. So yeah, that one is definitely getting a lot of attention, but because of that, I didn't play it yet. So as for what I did play, Haste Broken Worlds, as I mentioned, is very Sonic-y, but it also kind of feels like a snowboarding game with with some Tony Hawk in there. So basically, you're going downhill the entire time, and it's all about momentum. So you want to be able to like time your button presses just as you land on parts of the hill that slope down, because if you press the button on parts of the hill that slope up, you lose speed and all of a sudden like lose your combo and whatever it may be, and you want to be able to get to the end of every level as quickly as possible. What turned me off was, so there's a whole like bunch of little levels that comprise like this whole world you're in, and then I got to the final one. I died and I went all the way back to the beginning. I was like, all right, that's like 30 minutes of my time
Done.
wasted on that. So I hope they fix that, whenever the game comes out. But I wasn't a fan of that at all. The other one is Koira. I don't know how it's pronounced. Koira. This one is published by Don't Nod, and this game gives me a lot of vibes of like um, Patapon as far as its
Yeah.
visuals go, but it's a cozy game. So basically, you use this little dark character who um, has like the power to grab musical notes out of his dog to solve puzzles, and it eventually becomes a story where you're just attached to that dog. This demo took me about 30 minutes, and then the demo ended with the dog being kidnapped. And I'm like, you bastards! I'm gonna go ahead and give me the game now so I can figure out what happened, how I can save that dog's life, because how can you do this to me? And then the last one, Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3. Okay, this is a match 3 game. For some
That
reason,
sounds awesome.
it's really engaging. You don't have to worry about bejeweled microtransactions. This game is kind of like an RPG mixed with a puzzle fighter a little bit, because with every random encounter you'll have with places to get through, uh, not only do you have to do your match 3 stuff, you also have all these different commands you can do from the menu. So there is this one point where I have to open a lock, so I have to like pop as many red jewels as possible so I can, use the command in order to open the lock. and things like that. And yeah, like the premise is about this guy who is just a coward, and you pretty much use him like Simon Belmont. There's a lot of Metroidvania vibes as you go through it, but the
I love
whole
that.
thing is match 3, which is crazy that I'm even interested in it. And I know it's called Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3, but it's not a sequel. Match 3 is just aspect of it. It's really funny. But yeah, all of this, again, Steam Next Fest is going to end soon, so definitely download what you want and get to it. We're going to mention it in a little bit, but I'll be going to GDC. A whole bunch of these games will be there, so yeah, I'm looking forward to them.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through all the games. There's a ton of games, and
There's a ton.
there's a lot of indie horror games which I love. So yeah, I gotta get a jump on some of these. A lot of these look awesome. Kurosh, what are you playing?
I really so like you said, Steam Next Fest. I love it every time it comes around. They always have like a wave of it, either at the spring quarter, fall quarter, periodically here and there, and it's always a treat because I think like it's like an indie haven in a lot of ways. I really get to dive into them, and I really get to try a lot of fun stuff. I really stuck to a few just because I've been busy with so many other games right now in this early part of the Q1 of this year. The ones that I really enjoyed were Is This Seat Taken by Poti Poti Studio. That game is kind of like this cute looking logic puzzly game where it's a bunch of different scenarios and you have these little shape like characters that are stick figures, and each of them has a different condition of like where they'd like to be seated. And so some of them are like, I haven't showered in a week, where another one's like, I want to sit next to my parents. And so you have to find the seating arrangement to sit them all on the bus or in the cafeteria or whatever so that everyone's happy. And so it's got a little bit of a sense of humor. It's fun. I feel like it lends itself to being kind of like you can kind of just do a few. I always love a puzzle game where I can just like not think and just like knock out a few puzzles, have a fun time. It also can be very much like a hey, put this on the TV and enjoy it with your friends or family. Um, and I just love the tone and style of it all, and it was a fun demo that I got to try. Um, the next one was it's been previewed before, and it was actually at the Game Awards. The first Berserker Kazan by Neopol. It's very Neo from Soft esque in its like presentation. You're kind of doing a third person, kind of a harder, difficult, a Souls likey kind of a three action adventure game. And it's kind of got a to me what made it interesting was the anime esque nature of it. It kind of feels like Berserk or Conan the Barbarian with its tones and stylings, and I'm like, this is fun, and like the combat is very satisfying of what it does. It does some things that like Sekiro does, Liza P do, and I enjoy a little bit of that. I like occasionally to challenge myself in some of those ways. It's an ebb and flow. I'm not always like a glutton for punishment, but the way this one was handling it, I thought was a nice balance, and it's definitely interested me. And I know it's coming out fairly soon in the next couple months, so I'm looking forward to seeing more about that. And the last one, and probably my favorite one, and one I hope to speak on more later, is Ruffy in the Riverside. Uh, this one's by Socrates Labs. This game has been on my radar for the longest time. I keep seeing ads for it, and it feels like the most like trippy Spyro, Paper Mario, Donkey Kong 64 s 3D platformer in the weirdest combination of ways, but it works so well.
This looks
He
great.
has this ability to like copy and paste different elements of the textured world as he's running around, and he has a Paper Mario-esque quality to him and the other characters, so they exist in this 3D world, but like they kind of flip around, and it's kind of got a funky Parappa the Rappa, Toe Jam and Earl-ness to it that I'm like, I love this funkiness that you got. Like it just all blends in a really good combination that I'm like, I'm very here for this.
Yeah,
And
you just sold me on it just in the last 10 seconds of what you've been saying. This game looks awesome. Yeah.
it's so weird but so good, and the demo was fun. It's lighthearted, it doesn't take itself too seriously. I'm into it, I'm stoked for and that is also coming out very soon, I believe.
It just says Q1, so like April.
It is, and I've been just to let audiences know, I've been in talk with the developer. And we I'm hoping to speak about on the game a little bit more when it does come out, so I can share my thoughts on it. But Oh no, so it's gonna be sometime Q1, Q2.
Sweet. Tanner,
So
what's up?
Yeah, I mean, real quick, and I'm not intently trying to create dialogues. I know we're running out of time, but like, I also played the Ruffy demo, and yeah, I was sold to a point where I stopped playing because, like I said, I don't want to waste my time playing it. I'm gonna do it anyway. But because of the whole like copy and paste ability, that's why to me it doesn't feel like the games you talked about. It feels very different in that regard, and that's why I'm excited.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is definitely on my radar. I love retro kind of whimsical homage style games like this. So yeah, I'm very excited for this.
And then the other thing, real quick, one of the biggest reason why I care about Steam Next Fest so much is because I'm playing on Steam Deck. If it was on my PC, I wouldn't care at all.
It makes it way easier to just dive into some of these. I'm like you, Danreb, where I'm just like, hey, what should I download? I'll download like 8 games, load this sucker up, and then chill on the couch or go out somewhere, coffee shop or something, and just kind of zone out and play
I
stuff.
need to get a Steam Deck. I really want one. Man.
So good.
All right, that is Steam Next Fest. Danreb, you put GDC 2025 here on our show notes. You want to talk about GDC?
Yeah. So I don't know how in tune our viewers are with the industry and its events. GDC is very different. For those of you uninitiated, it is the Developers Conference. And traditionally, this is a way for developers to just go ahead and expand their knowledge. Like some of the more interesting talks out of the last few years has been like how Nintendo made Breath of the Wild so active despite the game being and looking so empty. Like one thing that I'd like love to know in the future, even though I'll never be a developer, is like how they got something like Ascend into Tears of the Kingdom, because that to me was a mechanic that should have won the game of the year that year. I know Myles thought it was Alan Wake, but it's okay to be wrong, and I know the world thought it should have been Baldur's
You need to play Alan Wake too, man.
Okay to be wrong.
It's
But
incredible.
yeah, like that's basically what that event is about. It's about developers networking and stuff like that. And every year I've gone, it's had a different vibe. When I've gone in the past, it's as a community manager to just learn more about the craft. I went last year as a job seeker, and like so did everybody else, in the medium, just because it's just that bad right now. Right after COVID, people were there to talk about both crypto and AI, and yeah, like there's always like these random trends that people are trying to get into, but a big part is the networking, and I really enjoy that aspect. This is actually going to be my first time going as official media, and my schedule is completely booked. A couple of the games that Kurosh played are appointments that I'll be making next week. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'll talk about it in our next podcast if there's room, and yeah.
Our next podcast is going to be a very special one. I don't know if we'll have room. So GDC, I was also supposed to go. I got approved to go as media as well, but unfortunately, San Francisco hotels downtown are some of the most expensive I've ever seen in my life. But please come back with all the new hot games, please. I'm very bummed that I'm not able to make it. Okay. Kurosh, I said I want to revisit since me and Danreb both said it. So far, what's your game of the year so far? March 9th, 2024.
I'm not going to include Expedition 33 just because it's been a demo, but it's probably very easily by a mile Monster Hunter Wilds.
Yeah.
I just get lost in it. I've been playing it so much, and I'm so relieved. On a personal note, I'm chasing the platinum given the amount of time I put on it. And I don't normally, I almost never, because I'm like, that game is always just so much of a pain. But the fishing, I'm nearly done with the fishing, and I never want to look at the fishing in that game ever again. But it's so fun playing with friends, getting them caught up, they hearing their frustrations with Nata. It's a communal thing that's really brought us again. The community comes together, and we come together in our love and in our hate. And
Do people actually hate Nada?
yeah, my friends are like, can I like
Get through it.
can you just authorize me to hunt already?
just do what I did.
Alma, just give me the word.
just ignore the story. That's what I did.
yeah. No, it's been fun, and like getting the groups together, and I like coming in and being this mercenary with them, and I'm excited when now they're going to be at the same level as me of like we're all chasing the end game, and then where it goes. So,
Right.
but I will say like the games we've played have been giving it a run for its money. Like
Oh yeah.
It's been no shortage of good games so far this year, and I'm stoked for even more. You know, we gotta acknowledge all the ones out there.
Yeah,
Right, Danreb?
absolutely. Absolutely. You know.
I don't know what this reference is. Is this a wrestling thing?
It's a WrestleMania reference. WrestleMania is right around the corner. Okay.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, that has been Leveled Loot episode 2. We caught up on a bunch of stuff that's been out in Q1. Like I mentioned earlier, our next episode is going to be extremely special. I'm not sure we can talk about it, but I'm very excited about it. And that's
It'll
it.
be the official delay of Grand Theft Auto.
It'll be me. It'll be me announcing Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming in 2035.
John Cena.
You're welcome. Okay, in case you don't know, you can find me at Myles Obenza. That's Myles with a Y, primarily on Instagram and Blue Sky, and you can find Temple of Geek at Temple of Geek pretty much everywhere. Kurosh, where can people find you?
You can find me at Cujo Prime everywhere, and on YouTube on my YouTube at youtube.com/@CujoPrime. I do have a new podcast that should be out around this time, so be on the lookout on my socials.
Danreb, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at danreb.bsky.social or at danrebv on Twitter. But I am coolest on LinkedIn. Look for my real name, Danreb Victoria.
He's very cool on LinkedIn. All right, that's it for another Leveled Loot. Thank you everyone for listening and or watching, and we will see you soon. Please be excited for the next one. Bye.